Guys, we know Polish and Finnish forces are coming to Hell Let Loose, hopefully in December, if Team 17 can stick to their recently revealed 2023 roadmap for the game. I'm super excited about their addition, so I'd like to run through the potential infantry weapons each of these forces could be getting. In this video, I'll cover the weapons the Polish forces might be armed with, and I'll be making a separate video on Finnish infantry weapons and another on the possible vehicles that the Poles and Finns might be having. So please subscribe if you want to catch those videos soon. This list will be based on the assumption that the Poles and Finns will be available not just in the smaller game modes of Objective and Skirmish, which are coming later down the line, but also in the larger, or should I say normal, full-size map, which means 50 vs 50 battles. The commander and officer roles in Hell Let Loose usually start with a submachine gun. The Germans have the MP40, the Americans have the Thompson M1A1, and the Soviets have the PPSH with a stick mag. Now, before the outbreak of World War II, like many other militaries at the time, the Polish army were interested in submachine guns and were developing their own, the Pistolet Maszynowy Wzór 39, or the Morse submachine gun. This had a 24-round magazine and was chambered in 9mm, and it was based on the German EMP submachine gun designed in the 1930s. However, only around 50 were produced by September 1939 on the outbreak of Second World War. I therefore think it should be restricted to commanders only, or even not be featured at all in the game for the sake of historical accuracy, which is something I really personally would like Hell Let Loose to lean into a bit more. Likewise, the Poles were developing a semi-automatic rifle called Karabin Samopowtarzalny Wzór 38M, or self-repeating rifle model 38M, which had a 10-round magazine, like the SVT-40 or the Gewehr 43, which were produced later in the war by the Soviets and Germans respectively. But between 1938 and 1939, only 150 or so of these self-repeating rifles had been produced, and it was very much a prototype, so it would not be historically accurate for this weapon to be widely available for the Polish forces in 1939. Before anyone jumps into the comments to say, oh, but this won't be balanced at all, the Polish forces will be hugely disadvantaged, let's not forget that a lot of the weapons, like the MP44, the Gewehr 43, the FG42 and the MG42, should not be available for the German forces on any maps in 1939. In 1939, the Germans should be armed with Kar-98s, MG34s, a handful of MP38s, which were an earlier version of the iconic MP40, and perhaps a few Czechoslovakian or Austrian weapons, which were co-opted when Germany took over those countries. If they keep it reasonably historically accurate, the 1939 maps won't be as unbalanced as you might expect. There'll just be a lot more bolt-action rifles on both sides, with the Germans having a bit of an advantage in terms of the number of submachine guns or machine guns available. In Hell Let Loose, Polish squad leaders and commanders might just have to make do with the following primary weapon. The Poles' main battle rifle at that time was the Karabinek Wzór 29, or Carbine Model 29. This is a 5-round bolt-action rifle based on the German Kar-98 Mauser action. The Carbine Model 29 was therefore quite comparable to the Kar-98K. Poles produced around 264,000 of these rifles between 1930 and 1939. This will most likely be the primary weapon in the starting loadouts for most of the roles present in Hell Let Loose, such as the rifleman, support, medic or engineer, and anti-tank roles for the Polish forces. The Poles also used a couple of Mosin-Nagant rifle variants, which could be available as an alternative primary weapon for level 3 or level 6 loadouts for the aforementioned roles, just to add a bit of variety. Since at the start of the Second World War, the Poles didn't have any mass-produced submachine guns, I think Assault and Automatic Rifleman class should get the Browning Wzór 1928, which is a Polish version of the American BAR. Like its American counterpart, the Browning had a 20-round magazine, but it was chambered in the 7.92 by 57mm Mauser round, which was also the Poles' primary cartridge for their main battle rifle. The machine gunner role could also get the Browning version 1928 for one of their loadouts, but the main MG option for the Poles should be the Ciężki Karabin Maszynowy Wzór 30, or Heavy Machine Gun Model 1930. This was a Polish copy of the American Browning M1917 heavy machine gun. This heavy machine gun would probably need to be a fixed deployable, as it has to be mounted on a tripod. The Poles produced more than 10,000 of these between 1931 and 1939. Now, when it comes to the anti-tank role for the Poles, they had at their disposal the Karabin Przeciwpancerny Wzór 35, or Model 35 anti-tank rifle. This was a bolt-action weapon with a 4-round magazine which fired a 7.9mm projectile. Interestingly, its anti-armor capabilities were not necessarily in armor penetration per se, but rather in the spalling effect the round had on armored targets. It fired a bullet with a lead core rather than a hardened armor-piercing core. When the bullet impacted armor, it flattened against the plate, transferring a lot of kinetic energy to the metal. This caused spalling on the interior of the armor plate, projecting hot metal fragments inside the tank at high speed, which would then ricochet around the interior, hopefully killing crew and or damaging equipment. Although such weapons would struggle against any of the mid to late war tanks which had better armour, these weapons were capable of knocking out early German war tanks like the Panzer Is, Panzer IIs, Panzer IIIs and even early Panzer IVs at close range. Around 6,500 of these anti-tank rifles were produced. For the level 6 gun crew loadout, the Poles should get the Bofors 37mm anti-tank gun, which was more than capable of taking out early war German armour when fired at close range. It makes sense for the sniper in Polish recon teams to use the standard infantry bolt-action rifle along with the scope. When it comes to pistols, there are likely two options. Firstly, the Nagant M1895 revolver, which could just be copied from the existing Soviet model in the game as they are more or less identical, but then there is the Polish Viz-35. This is an 8-round 9mm semi-automatic pistol designed and produced in Poland. The two common types of hand grenades available to the Poles were the Granat Zapieżny Wzór 24, this was a concussion grenade, or the Granat Obronny Wzór 33, which was a fragmentation grenade. Polish forces also had something known as the Granatnik Wzór 36, or Grenade Launcher Model 36. This light mortar would be a welcome counterbalance to the MG Heavy Germans. It was capable of firing grenades up to 800 meters, and it fired a 46mm shell weighing 0.76 kilograms or 1 pound and 11 ounces, and nearly 4,000 of these were produced before 1939. Next, I'll briefly touch on what weapons we might be getting if they ever add a Warsaw Uprising map. If you don't know, in August 1944, the Polish resistance launched an uprising which resulted in a 63-day battle to liberate the city from German occupiers as Soviet forces approached from the east. Polish resistance should have access to most of the weapons I've already mentioned in this video, alongside a bunch of captured German weaponry, but they also had two other sources of weaponry and equipment. Firstly, those airdropped or smuggled in to them by the Allies, like the British Sten gun or some Soviet weapons, but they also produced in secret a number of weapons during the German occupation for use by the resistance. This includes the Błyskawica, or lightning submachine gun, which the Polish Home Army managed to produce several hundred of during the occupation, alongside Polish versions of the Sten gun. The Home Army also produced a flamethrower called the Miotacz Ognia Wzór K, or K-model flamethrower. Anyway, that's it for this video folks. Let me know what your thoughts are on the addition of the Polish forces to Hell Let Loose.